Kate. How do you like the results? Hey, Steve, how do you like the results?
It's okay.
What do you mean okay? They said they found nothing. Spent a year going for nothing. Millions and millions of dollars for nothing. They could send you and I a little a couple 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2019 show. I'm your host, Don Kay. We are live from McGilvery Speedway, 30th and High School in the beautiful town of Speedway, Indiana. Tonight's show is presented, as always, by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, NTT IndyCar Series, and SVRA. I've got a couple of minor things to mention. This one is kind of astounding. Those of you who are familiar with Noggles Goggles, it's now, of course, John has passed away, but it's been taken over by Phil Kaiser. And about 3 weeks ago, they have monthly they have what they call Race Chaser. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they said contacted me and said, "How would you like to be our guest?" I said, "You've got to be kidding." So if you have the chance, on the 23rd of March at Green Street in Brownsburg, they're having the Race Chaser. And there's a $10 charge to go to it, and it goes to charity. And my charity is going to be the Indy Family Foundation. So everybody comes in the door. They got good food at Green Street. And the money will go to the Indy Family Foundation, and you'll have to listen to my nonsense, maybe. How many watched the race? How was it? Was it a good race? Not bad. I thought it was a pretty decent race. And if there's ever such a thing as a Chamber of Commerce weekend, it was this weekend. Holy Toledo. Phenomenal. Also want to wish a happy 81st birthday to Mike Smith. Those of you who know him, Mike's not in real good health, but he did have his birthday. I think Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. A couple other minor things. Are you ready for spring? If you are, is your yard ready? Well, now's the time that you can get everything together and get new ideas on how to make it bigger and better. Now until the 17th at the Indiana State Fairgrounds is time for the Indiana Flower and Patio Show. And there's all kinds of goodies going around. It just so happens that I have 6 tickets left. If anybody is interested, let me know. To get all the scoop on what's going on at the show, you can go to www.indianaflowerandpatioshow.com. You got several seminars yet upcoming, and they'll tell you how it works and where it works and what they got going. So check it out. Also, everybody's favorite thing to do is go see their dentist. Ask Eldon. He loves it. He's going there. The Indy Dental Group, the best group. I'm telling you, these guys are phenomenal. So it's Dr. Jack Miller and Dr. Liz Lewis. If you need an appointment, you want to see a dentist, trust me when I tell you, they are good. Make an appointment. Number is 317-846-6125. And once again, over the weekend, I had trouble with my computer. Not a surprise. When I have trouble, I talk to my friend Jack at Computer Overdrive. If you have a problem, call him. He can tell you what might look at. The home of the free checkup, so they'll check it for you for nothing. Call him. His number is 317-328-0766. You got to hurry. The 21st of April is the ending of the Hoosier Thunder Indiana Short Track Heritage. A great display. If you haven't been there, you got to go. It's really, really good. You'll like it. And in case you didn't notice, I'm all dressed full bore for St. Patrick's Day. I'm ready. And if you want to be Irish, you got to come to McGilvery's, the big tent party. They're going to have from the 15th to the from March 15th to the 10th of November, from 7 to 9 is the entertainment. They got all-star DJ entertainment, 9 to 12 on the 15th. The 16th, they got Rockin' Horse in top 10, and on the 17th, they got Tim Newman, Crazy Cats, She Loves Horses, and Country Summer. So if you want to be Irish, this is the place to be. McGilvery's. Now, my first guest is a young lady that I had scheduled for next week. You notice she doesn't look like Jack Harvey. Now, I don't know if you noticed any difference.
A little less British as well.
Well, that too.
British.
However,
Sound a little different.
Ladies were interested in Jack. I called her, and she said yes, foolishly. She's been here once before. She is a super athlete person, loves athletics, has been very much involved in it. She is a senior manager of the national outreach of IndyCar. She's got a BS and a master's. She's got a degree in sports journalism. She got a couple of. I'm going to find out what she does. Please welcome Ms. Kate Guerra.
Thanks, Don.
You've been at the Speedway for a little over 7 years.
I've been there since May 2011, so I'm coming up on 8.
I know. I said more than 7. I thought
everything you just said was 100% accurate.
For once. If anybody says I'm wrong, for once I was right. What got you interested in sports? You took, I think you at the University of Texas in Austin, you had art, English, and sports communication. How did arts and English end up with sports communication?
So I got my I like how you said I got my BS, because I feel like I have my BS in a lot of areas of life.
So do I.
But I actually got my Bachelor of Arts degree at the University of Texas in 2010, and I majored in English. And while I was out there doing that, I started writing for the school newspaper, the Daily Texan. I was the softball beat writer for a couple semesters and had a lot of fun doing that, and just kind of realized that that's what I wanted to do, and that was my passion. I wanted to go into sports. I grew up with a sports family. We grew up a big Cowboys fan, big Astros fan, big Spurs fan, all the good Texas teams, if you know what I'm saying.
In relation to the White Sox or the Bears or anything like that, the Bulls?
Not as of yet, Don, but there's still time. There's still time. Maybe you can convince me.
No. How did you, the family involvement in sports, was there anything in particular, or you just sports in general, so you said, I want to do that?
Honestly, sports in general. I grew up playing sports. I played a lot of volleyball in my life. So it's just, there's so much to be told about life through sports. Like, my favorite sport outside of IndyCar racing is baseball. So
White Sox. There you go.
White Sox. Are you a White Sox fan?
Oh,
or are
absolutely.
you okay? Just checking. Go.
Don't listen to him.
So I just feel like there's so much you can glean from life from sports. There's always a story to be told, whether you're talking about the way a sport's played, or how an athlete approaches a sport. And I think there's so many stories to be told that translate into something that's more than just about a game. So I found that part of sports very interesting.
Did you find it easy? Now, I would think you wouldn't have a problem, but did you find it easy to speak to the athletes, to interview them, talk to them, get their perspective on what happened and what they're doing? And
You know what I think makes it easier for me personally is
I got a pretty good idea.
the one sport that I didn't grow up with was IndyCar racing.
Really?
100% accurate. I never watched a race, never attended a race growing up. It was something that became a new passion of mine later in life. So I have a feeling that my lack of sort of idolizing of those athletes when I was younger probably makes me a lot more comfortable around them in the sport now.
You wrote for several newspapers along the way before you arrived in town.
I wrote for the Daily Texan, which is though a student newspaper, a major publication in the city of Austin. I also wrote for a high school sports website when I first moved here to Indianapolis. So it was called Hoosier Authority. It is now defunct. And
yeah, you left it and went.
I had nothing to do with that, though. I had nothing to do with it going defunct. But I hope not. They'd send me around to all the local high schools in Indianapolis and the surrounding area, and I would cover anything from lacrosse to swimming and diving to football to basketball, and an absolute variety of sports and a different variety of schools too, which was actually very helpful for me because when I moved to Indianapolis, I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't know much about the area, so covering all the different schools and high schools, and I learned a lot about the city through that.
Seems to have worked well.
It did work well.
Did you come calling to IndyCar, or did they hear about you wandering around town and say, Oh, come here. We
Oh
want to
no!
talk to you.
Oh no! I definitely went calling. They let when I was in graduate school, they let our program know that they were seeking an intern for the month of May, and so I applied for that internship and was very graciously awarded that internship. And then after the month of May was over and I had graduated for the most part from grad school and had no job and no way to make a living or life for myself as most students coming out of college and grad school, I just kind of kept showing up. So I just kept coming into the office. Nobody told me to go home. They kept paying me $5 an hour, whatever it was that they were paying me. And I just kept coming until around, I guess, August or September, somebody looked at me and said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Yes, I would like to work here if that's okay." And they said, "Well, maybe we should talk about hiring you full time, unless you just want to keep getting paid $5 an hour for the rest of history." And I said, "No, I do not want that." And eventually they hired me on full time.
Now, did having a degree help when you applied? They want to?
I really think it did, and here's why. I discovered my passion for writing and sports kind of later in college. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do until I would say my junior or senior year of college. So I really needed that extra time of school to learn more about sports journalism and what it took to cover sports that I learned in grad school. And then, though I ultimately didn't end up as a writer or a journalist myself, having that exposure to everything that goes into covering a sport was super helpful for me as a media relations representative, because I have a working knowledge of what a reporter's looking for in a story, of what sort of questions they want to ask, of what sort of stories would be of interest to them, because I know if I were writing this story, what would I want to write about? And I'm able to help them that way. I feel it was crucial, absolutely crucial.
Senior national outreach, what does that mean?
So I've worn many hats at IndyCar since I started. I obviously started as an intern, everything from getting coffee to driving. I had to learn how to drive a golf cart, which is not as easy as it sounds. And it's even more intimidating when you're driving around Indianapolis 500 champions in it and you've never driven a golf cart before. So it's a skill.
It's embarrassing.
It's a skill that I'm very proud of now, Don.
Good.
So I started as an intern, and then eventually I started taking over some of our social media accounts, and I was working a lot on what we call our advance program, which is a local program that we use. So anytime we go into a race market, for example, we just got back from St. Petersburg, as you guys know, we have a local advance program, which means that we take drivers into those cities and nearby cities of that race, anywhere from a month out to 4 to 6 weeks out of an event. And we go and we chat with all the TV stations and the newspapers and the radio stations to make sure that as many people as possible in those areas know about the race and where they can buy tickets and all the fun things that they can do at the track. And they're also learning more about our drivers, because it's obviously our drivers that are delivering that message. So they're learning, which drivers are funny, which drivers are good on TV, and they're growing more and more knowledgeable about the sport through the drivers. So that's what I was doing on the local side for many years. I do a very similar thing now on the national side, except I'm working with media, not necessarily in our race markets. We have other people that do that now. I'm working with media in New York. I'm working with media in Chicago and Los Angeles, which, as we can probably all realize, are media that don't know a lot about IndyCar racing or don't know a lot about our drivers. So I feel that I have a special connection to that, because I was in their shoes not too long ago. I didn't know much about IndyCar racing before I started working at the series, and it's fun to see people go through the same process that I went through in falling in love with the sport. So I work on getting our drivers in the New York Times and in the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, ESPN, those major programming, and I'm also working on trying to place our drivers on big national entertainment programs. So you guys might have seen Elio Castroneves and James Hinchcliffe on Dancing with the Stars throughout the past 7 to 10 years. Those are things that my department's working on.
Are there certain drivers that you prefer to take to the public because they are so good in the public? Now, I had Scott Dixon when he first came here.
Right.
At the IndyCars. Mm-hmm. In order to get an answer out of him, he had to kick him. But now he's very at ease. He's very.
You would kick Scott Dixon?
Not really. I
Okay,
just said
just
that.
checking.
If I did, he'd have run over me. At the time, he went through the race team's fence. He forgot to stop when he was bringing a vehicle back, ran through the fence. But now he's very accomplished and very accommodating, and didn't like to do the quick interviews after qualifying, but now he does. There are certain drivers you guys say, let's send him because he's good.
I get asked this question a lot.
I just thought of it now.
You're a you asked it in a very polite way. Most people just ask me, which drivers don't you like working with, which I feel is essentially the root of your question. But
no, not really.
I think that, and I'm speaking honestly when I say that, there's not one driver that I work with that I really don't enjoy working with. Even the ones that people think are more difficult, that sort of get the rep for being more difficult or less media friendly, they have stories and personalities of their own too. And I like to think that I'm the kind of person that can work with a lot of different kinds of personalities. So sure, is Marco Andretti a little more shy and reserved than James Hinchcliffe? Yeah.
Not anymore. He's gotten a lot different.
He is a lot different. He's coming out of that shell a lot. But are they a lot different in personality? Sure. But at the same time, there's a lot that Marco offers that maybe James doesn't. So they all have their strengths, and I think that a good PR person can use different personalities as effectively as they can be used.
Before your time, before you were born, A.J. Watson, you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't.
He's a 7-time winner of the 5 as a car owner and builder.
It's amazing.
And when you'd ask him a question, how is it? Nice. Where you been today? Out. What was the last thing you did? I don't know. I invited him, and they said, you're in trouble. I said, why? He answers in one word. The trick is to ask a question. It takes more than one word. It took me 40 years to figure that out, however. And I've never had a problem with it. It seems easy. And surprisingly, most of these guys are easy to talk to if you ask the right questions, they'll tell you.
They are. And then you have kind of an even upper echelon of drivers who have learned how to answer questions that aren't knowledgeable. So for example, a lot of the media that I'm working with don't know a lot about racing, and they may not know a lot about the drivers either. So they might ask what somebody might say an ignorant question or two that is very sort of beginner level. And it's super important to me, and I stress this to our drivers all the time, and they're absolute pros at it, that you have to approach that answer positively. It doesn't mean that it's not a negative thing to teach somebody about IndyCar, and they all truly embrace that, and they've gotten better at answering those questions a lot better.
In your short history in sports writing, who was better to deal with, the girls in volleyball and whatever they played, field hockey and so forth, or the boys in their sports when you had to deal with either one? Which was easier?
I don't know if I could say that one gender was better than the other. I don't know if I could put it down to boys versus girls. I would say I probably didn't notice much of a difference between boys and girls, but you would definitely notice a difference when, for example, I was covering Warren Central football versus a school that isn't as good at football, because Warren Central, at the time when I was covering it anyway, had won like X number of state championships in a row, and so their players were very used to being interviewed. And they were obviously all men. So, but I also interviewed a lot of really, really good women's volleyball programs who, again, were also used to interviews. I think it's more about experience than gender is I guess what I'd get at there.
What, if anything, what is lacking in getting the word out now? NBC television, I think, is going to be huge. I think the IndyCar has now the ability to market the television rights around the world, which I think will be good. What do you think needs to happen in the next year to really catapult IndyCar where it should be? Because without question, in my mind, it's the best racing in the world. If you win the IndyCar championship, these guys are world champion in Formula One. When was the last time you're in an oval or on one?
Right.
Oh, I wouldn't do that. Why not? What do I have to prove? That you can do it would be one thing.
Right. No, it's interesting because a lot of people know most when you're looking at the IndyCar season. They know most about the Indianapolis 500. And oftentimes it can be almost seen as more of a badge of honor to have won an Indy 500 versus a series championship. I've never really bought into I mean, the Indy 500 is obviously the crown jewel of motorsports, but I've never really bought into the fact that it's more exciting to win or more prestigious to win a 500 than an IndyCar season for that exact reason. Because if you're an IndyCar champion, that means that you mastered the short ovals, you mastered the super speedways, you mastered the temporary street circuits, you mastered the permanent road courses, and I just don't think that anybody else in any other series, to your point, can say that. So yeah, I think winning an IndyCar season championship is amazing. But to answer your question, I think that what needed to have happened has already happened, and you hit on it. It's that one consistent television partner in NBC. And I can't think of the last time since we announced the deal in, I think it was March of 2018, that I haven't been on the phone or texting or calling somebody at NBC, because they're doing so much. We just had Joseph Newgarden, our 2017 series champion, at an NHL hockey game that NBC was hosting, and they put him on the ice. They have this sort of their sideline reporter experience. It's called Inside the Glass. And so it's this little glass booth that sits on the ice in between the two benches of the hockey game. And they put a reporter down in there to broadcast live updates from the game. And they put Joseph Newgarden in there. And he brought Pierre Maguire, the host, an IndyCar helmet and said, I want you to wear this when you're broadcasting, because a few weeks ago, Pierre narrowly missed a puck that flew past his face. So Joseph brings him a helmet and sits in there with him for the first period of the hockey game and commentates it like he has been broadcasting hockey for years. He compared the hockey players when they do, I don't know a lot about hockey, when they switch out during the play, when the hockey players jump over their bench and they go out to the ice and the other players come back. Joseph was comparing that to coming out on new tires, and coming out of the pits on new tires, and the comparisons between hockey and racing, things that I would have never thought of that he just thinks of naturally. So that's just one example. We just had, if you guys are familiar with South by Southwest, it's one of the biggest film and music festivals in the world that happens every year in Austin, Texas. Comcast, which owns NBC, had a activation space there, and they invited Will Power and Mario Andretti to go out with the Borg-Warner Trophy and speak to all of these film and entertainment and music industry executives about IndyCar's new relationship with NBC. And that's just two of many, many examples of things that we're working on with NBC right now that really show how motivated they are to let fans know that you can find IndyCar racing on NBC and nowhere else.
And I didn't know about iBank right down here at PNC.
Absolutely.
And Slick Willie sent me a picture of Scott's car in the window. I said, "Where is that?" He said, "At the bank down the bottom of the street." Mm-hmm. I went down there, and the people said, we couldn't have believed, and first the number of people were there. They brought the Borg-Warner Trophy. He said, that was a project, because it comes in pieces. And you have to put it all together, and don't touch it.
It comes in 3 pieces. The gentlemen that bring it out have to wear these beautiful white gloves, and they set it up. It has to have security with it 24/7 at all times. It is a tall task to transport that trophy. For sure.
I was hoping they'd stop by the house, but it didn't work out.
They didn't work.
No, it didn't work out.
Funny story. One time, each IndyCar champion receives a mini version of the Astor Cup. And so then the Astor Cup is our season championship trophy. It's over 100 years old. It's beautiful and historic. And each champion receives a smaller version of it, just like the baby Borg that the Indy 500 champion receives. Well, when Scott Dixon won his last IndyCar championship this past season, he now had a collection of Astor Cups, and we were taking it for a photo shoot. And long story short, all of these Astor Cups ended up on my kitchen counter at some point as we were transporting them around, and I just kind of took a second
to realize like the gravity of having these gorgeous trophies in my house and what they represented. So the Astor Cup, a lot more transportable than Borg-Warner, just FYI. And I can get those in your kitchen if you want them to stop by. Borg-Warner, I can't promise anything.
Well, he needs to win one more so we can put the Borg-Warner in between three on each side.
Exactly.
He's going to have a fight this year. I think that Felix Rehnquist will be good.
I'll let you guys know. I had a dream last night that Scott Dixon won the Indianapolis 500. I just want to let you know.
Did you tell him?
So I haven't told him yet.
Oh, I see.
I might, but I don't want to jinx it either. So I might not tell him.
So what did you do in St. Pete? What was your task there?
So in St. Pete, actually a lot of my job happened before St. Pete.
Oh, everything happens before the green. Yes.
I've been to New York City twice in the past week, just having meetings and working. I know meetings, but really good meetings to talk about exciting things that we want to do leading up to not just the season, but leading up to the Indy 500 too. And then I came back with one of our new drivers, Marcus Ericsson, who's a driver that's been racing in Formula One for a few years that made the choice to come over to IndyCar. And I found that story really interesting. I thought that national media would find it interesting too. The other part of Marcus's story, aside from just being extremely personable and a really, really good gentleman, is that he's stepping into the shoes of Robert Wickens on that team. And so you guys may be familiar that Robert had that horrible crash in Pocono last August and is having to relearn how to walk. And so to step into those shoes, regardless of, he's not driving Robert's 6 car, he's driving his own 7 car. And the 6 car's at the shop waiting for Robert when he gets back. But, he's stepping in as James's teammate into some big shoes. So we took him to New York, and he spoke with media about the opening of the IndyCar season, about what it takes to go from many seasons in Formula One to the IndyCar series, and really spoke very well about that. And so did all of that work leading into St. Pete. And then in St. Pete, there's just a lot of things that come up. We sit in the media center, so there are reporters that are looking for interviews. You're brainstorming with them about what their day end stories should be and what sort of things they might need to produce that kind of content. So it's kind of like a full service type of role. And it sounds like there may be a lot of downtime if there's something that someone doesn't need. That never happens. It never ever happens that there's really any sort of downtime. So it was a busy weekend. It was a really busy weekend. And at the same time, we have a race, not this upcoming weekend, but the next weekend at Circuit of the Americas in Austin.
Where?
So in Austin, Texas.
Oh, I
know.
heard there's a lady from Austin sitting right here.
There is.
It's your mother.
My mom has joined us in town from Texas.
She wanted to practice
today.
shoveling snow, and it hasn't snowed.
It hasn't. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'm very excited about that. But so there were even points in the weekend in St. Pete where I was even preparing for the next couple of weeks. So it's a lot of juggling, but very busy. And it was good to be back in St. Pete too. If you've never made it out to that race, I really recommend it. I think it's one of the coolest. I think all of our street races are cool, but I think it's certainly one of the coolest, and the weather was beautiful. At one point I found myself complaining that it was hot, and I nearly kicked myself because it beat when I left Indianapolis, it was 9 degrees outside. So yeah. I kicked myself a little bit for complaining about that.
And I bet I have friends that live there where I stayed of the weekend, and they said that Green Savory has had stuff in the paper for almost 2 months.
Absolutely.
If you didn't know there was a race in, you had to have your head in the sand.
Absolutely. No, the local media. We've been. I think this was our 16th event there on the streets of St. Pete. So it's slowly approaching. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it's slowly approaching Long Beach territory. The Grand Prix of Long Beach has been around for over 40 years, and it's historic. And when we have a lot of TV stars, movie stars are based in the LA area, and when we work with them around that race or around the Indy 500 when they come out for that, they'll mention, when I was growing up, we used to go out every year to Long Beach, and there was a car race there, and we're like, yeah, that's our race, So St. Pete is really building that community around Florida. We had a lot of media from Miami that drove up for it. There's Sarasota's close by, Orlando's not too far of a drive, so it's really become a destination for people to come in Florida. It's right around the time that many colleges are doing spring break or very close before or after it. So you get a younger crowd as well, and that's always nice to see at any race. So it's a really fun event.
I would venture to say that this had to be one of their bigger, more attended, because Friday was really crowded. I was really surprised.
Friday was packed.
Yes.
It was insane. In fact, I saw that Mark Miles, our CEO, gave a quote to Sports Business Journal this afternoon that ticket sales for that race were up 15% this year. And I think for the past several years, that track has beaten its attendance record for the past several years. So it's growing at a very, very quick rate.
You were there, as was I.
Yes.
But those watching on television said, my God, how did they ever start the race? The pit area was jammed. The guys couldn't move the cars. They couldn't.
It's insane.
Oh, Lord. Have mercy.
I wonder that every year. In fact, I just had this conversation with somebody about the Indianapolis 500 because I always try to make it. Oftentimes, I don't get to go out to the pre-race grid before the race because that's a really busy time in the media center as we're getting the broadcast going and people are asking questions or making announcements. But I always make it a point to do so at the Indy 500. And I have no idea how our tech officials clear that grid before the race because it is literally like you're trying to swim through people and elbowing out of the way. But that's the beautiful thing about IndyCar. You don't see that in any. You can't be on the sidelines next to Tom Brady before the Super Bowl. Like it's a unique experience, and it's one of honestly my biggest selling points when I go talk to media, and they're like, well, could we be next to Scott Dixon during pre-race, or could we be in his pit box during the race? And the answer is yes, you can be, and we can give you that access. And that's something that not a lot of other sports can offer if there is another one.
Certainly not many of the major racing sports.
Right.
I knew a guy, as I've said this before, that spent I think 15 or 17 million to sponsor a McLaren car. I think it was McLaren. And I said, "You ever go to any of their
You don't
races?"
have $15 to $17 million laying around on?
But it doesn't matter. I couldn't get in, neither could he.
Me a lot.
He couldn't get in. He's never had the driver at a event. He's never been to the company. I said, you give the money to the team, and he hasn't done anything. You can't go in the pit area to race. No. For $15 million, I wouldn't do it either.
It's actually been a lot of fun to work with the Austin track, the Circuit of the Americas track, because they've never had an IndyCar race before. So there's so many things that that they've never experienced in working with us compared to some of the other series that they've worked with. Simple things from even like security to pre-race entertainment, all of that kind of stuff. It essentially becomes the responsibility of those other series in the past, and it's a joint effort with us for sure because we work very closely with our tracks on a lot of things. So it's been an interesting adjustment period.
Well, when they tested down there, they tell me they had a very good turnout to watch.
It was great. It was great.
This place is going to be packed, I think, because it's a beautiful track. The guy that built it originally used to own the Minnesota Vikings. Mm-hmm. And he sold the racetrack, but he built it in 7 months.
I remember this because they announced it right when I was graduating college there, and so I never got to see it. Actually, I was there with Graham Rahal a couple of weeks before our open test to do promotions around it in the race, and that was my first time seeing the track, and it was really neat. It's a beautiful facility. It's amazing.
Phenomenal. It's going to be a good event. That's not this coming week, it's the following week.
Correct. Yes, March 24th is the race date.
And you'll be there, of course.
I will be there.
Now,
I will be there.
I heard a rumor that IndyCar is going to declare what do you call it when you make an investment, a return on investment, because they don't have to buy you a hotel. You can stay with your mom.
I could actually. So my parents are actually in the Houston area now. We're from. I went to college there. They didn't follow me. As much as I wanted them to. But we're from deep South Texas. We're from a city called McAllen, Texas, which is all the way at the very bottom tip of the state, right on the border of Mexico. But they've been we lived in Georgia for a while, and then I went to college in Austin. And after I went off back to Texas, they came back to Texas too. And I like to think that I was responsible for that. They couldn't be that far away from me.
You're not moving up here by chance.
I like to tell my brother that I'm the favorite, but it's not true.
I'd make
because soon after I moved to Indianapolis, he moved to Chicago, and yet they stayed in Houston. So they must not like us that much.
I guess not. I don't. Besides that,
I miss them.
You don't need a snow shovel in Houston.
That's true.
Not
you really
often,
don't.
Anyway.
You really don't. Just a lot of sunscreen.
Yeah. We were down there, I forget what race in Dallas, Fort Worth. And I talked to people, because that's what I sit in the restaurants or go somewhere. I say, you going to the race? Oh, it's too hot. You live here.
I know.
What the hell's the surprise about that?
Yeah, and it's a night race.
Yeah.
No excuses.
Well, they found them.
Texas Motor Speedway's a
However,
night race.
you have to say that that Cracker Jack promoter has drawn in excess of 90,000 people. He's phenomenal.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
That's a great
great
race.
guy.
That's a great race.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming. I hope you didn't mind coming a week earlier than was
I
scheduled.
just feel so bad for everybody that showed up to see Jack Harvey.
I don't.
I just want to apologize.
I don't.
I'm really sorry.
I don't. The hell do I care about Jack?
So
He'll be
he's
here
here.
next-
So he's here next week.
Yeah.
Come back next week for Jack Harvey. He is an amazing person, just a very kind person, and I love the Meyer Shank Racing team that he's driving for. Their car's pink. That's a good enough reason to follow him because it's awesome.
Not totally pink, but pink and black.
It is a very cool looking race car, and he's just a great guy. So I definitely recommend you come back to check him out.
Yeah, well, you said you checked and he'd been invited. I talked to him on Thursday for 45 minutes. He'd never, Peter, well, we're talking
He
about
has
this.
people that do the scheduling.
Yeah, I
it's
know.
not his fault.
He doesn't listen anyway. Well, I thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You're doing a good
Thank
job.
you.
Keep it up and
Appreciate it.
keep getting people coming and getting the grandstands.
I'm trying.
I know
I'm
you
trying.
are. Well,
I appreciate it.
thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Kate Guerra, the Senior National Reach Out Director for IndyCar. My next guest is here, and he's on his way up in a minute. Probably need a wheelchair. Oh, that's right. You were talking with a former, another Hall of Fame. Yeah. Do you need anything that needs to be embroidered? Well, place to go, of course, is Stitches 2 on Gasoline Alley. They can do anything on anything. No matter what you have, you bring, whatever it is, you just let them know. Tell them what it is. Fran will be happy to help you. I was just thinking, Fran's been under the weather lately, and I was just thinking about it. I don't know why it popped in my mind. But give them a call. They can take care of anything you need embroidered. Their number is 317-271-3444. Now, are you a vintage car buff? Well, then you got to subscribe to the Vintage Racing Quarterly. It's a great magazine, great story. Some of the cars that you saw as a kid are actually on the track being driven by some of the drivers you knew as a kid as well. Just go to www.svra.com and subscribe to the Vintage Racing Quarterly. And the SVRA's next event is March 28th to the 31st at Road Atlanta in Brazelton, Georgia, at the 2019 Road Atlanta Grand Prix. If you're in the area anywhere, if you have to drive 2 hours, it's worth it. Go and see it. I got to remind you that Sam Pierce Chevrolet is the best place in the country to buy a Chevrolet because it is in the country, in Daleville. You just take I-69 north to exit 234, go east 1 mile, and you'll see them full color right in front of you. That's Sam Pierce Chevrolet. Is it time to buy insurance for your home, your car, or your commercial property? Then do what I did and what a lot of people have done. Call Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street in the beautiful town of Speedway, and Mike can help you. He can get better coverage for less money. Give him a call. The number is 317-248-0070. And if you're looking for a vintage car to run for yourself, how about a 1977 Don Edmonds Auto Research Lindsay Hopkins chassis number LHL4 with a Drake Offie in it? Call the Grand King Shop to find out. Take a look at number 317-820-3959. And if you want to ride in a two-seater, go online to IndyRacingExperience.com, pick out a date, look into it, find out if you can make it, then go in the promo box and put SJ1. You get a 50% discount. That is the world-famous Indy Racing Experience two-seater ride. Once you've tried it, you'll love it. My next guest is a gentleman that I'm very pleased and honored to say. I invited him. He said, sure. Surprise. Somebody asked me the other day, how did you get him to come to the show? I said, hello? Will you do it? Yeah. That was simple. This gentleman has been an idol and a hero around here for years. 1954, his team, the whopping town of Milan, won the Indiana State Basketball Championship, and that's the time when it was open and everybody played everybody, and they came out number one. A movie was made Hoosiers, and it was around that team, and they showed him making what is knocked Indiana on its ear and put the DNA of basketball in Hoosiers. He's 1981 was inducted into the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. He had a great career and has still got one. Please welcome the one, the only, Mr. Bobby Plump.
Thanks, Don.
Did I cover one or two things right?
I think you did very well.
Wow.
Boy, what a necklace you got
I
there,
know.
huh?
I'm lovely. Some of this is supposed to be a trade, but it didn't work. And I'm not
Well, it
happy.
looks nice.
Oh, I'm lovely, aren't I? Green on blue with red. That's good.
There you go.
How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Are you surprised at the attention you still get all this time?
You know, it's amazing, Don. It has been a year or two since I played high school basketball in college, and it still resonates, thanks to Angelo Pizzo and David Anspaugh and the movie Hoosiers. You all seen the movie Hoosiers? Great movie, wasn't it? Yeah. That kind of revived things, and it's just been a wonderful ride, Don, and it's kind of like I enjoy it. It's wonderful. It's nice to be recognized. It's nice to have had a career that I had. I've just been very fortunate. That's the best way I think I can put it, Don.
Let me ask you, the movie showed, and I wasn't at the game. I tried to get there, but I couldn't make it. They showed you holding the ball for almost 3 minutes.
Well, actually, what happened in the actual game, they couldn't show it on the movie Hoosiers because, if there's no action on the court for 4 minutes and 17 seconds, it gets kind of boring. But at the tournament, when there were 15,000 people at Butler Fieldhouse, and we were behind 28-26, and I stood there for 4 minutes and 17 seconds, and nobody moved, Bob Collins said it was the most exciting 4 minutes and 17 seconds he's ever seen in his life. And by the way, there's a gentleman out here in the audience that could tell you that same story. Howdy Bell, stand up. What a great guy. Hey, Howdy, I can't jump anymore either.
He keeps reminding everybody every week, I'm in the Hall of Fame. I'm in the Hall of Fame. And Eldon tells him, sit down, shut up, so am I. When I talked to Tom Carnegie, he was in here one night, and I said, what was the most difficult broadcasting you ever did? He said, I'm going to tell you, you're not going to believe this. Waiting for 4 minutes and 17 seconds for Milan to do something, and I had to make up stuff to talk about.
Yeah,
nothing happened.
He told me that many, many times before he died. We used to have an annual dinner with Tom Carnegie and his wife, and what a great voice. Have you ever heard anybody with a better voice for any kind of broadcast? I mean, he was absolutely marvelous. And he'd talk about that. He said, man, that might have been exciting for the people up in the stand, but it was boring for me. I didn't know what I was going to say.
Was that play set up intentionally that you'd hold the ball and you'd get the last shot? Was that the plan?
Well, this wasn't before the last shot. This was shortly into the fourth quarter. See, we had Muncie Central down 23-17 at halftime. We were ahead 6 points. To give you an idea of how that worked for us, and I didn't know a lot of this until David Halberstrom called me, the Pulitzer Prize writer, and he was writing for a national magazine, and he had me look up some statistics. We played a team that you all will know, Oscar Robertson and Attucks, in the finals of the semi-state. We had them down 6 points at halftime, the same as we did Muncie Central. We went into our four-corner offense, which we could use as an offensive weapon. We beat them 65-52. Everybody thought we were a low-scoring team because the score was 32-30 against Muncie Central. We averaged 55.7 points per game in the tournament in 1954, and when we hit Muncie Central, we had a 15-point winning margin. Now, here we are, 6 points ahead. We go into our four-corner offense, and whenever we did that, we beat Gersmeyer in the afternoon 60-48 using the four-corner offense that you all thought Dean Smith invented in 1971 at North Carolina. We just kind of borrowed it in 53 and 54 with Marvin Wood. And we could use it as an offensive weapon. But it backfired. Here, we're ahead 23-26. Shortly into the fourth quarter, they're ahead of us 28-26. We score 3, they score 11. We get in the huddle, and Woody, who was the calmest guy in the world, he was only 26 years old. He was the youngest coach to win a state tournament since 1915 at Thornton. And he said, you know, if we get the ball, whether we're ahead or behind, we're not doing real well. Let's just stall. It wasn't set that I was going to stand there for 4 minutes. I think I only stood there for 3.5 minutes. We moved for 45 seconds. But it just ended up going into the fourth quarter. Here we are. We're behind. And the clock, nobody moved on our team except for the first 40 seconds for 4 minutes and 17 seconds, and we're behind 2 points in the most important game of our life. They asked Woody after it was all over, they said, Woody, what in the world was in your mind? You get that Plump kid standing out there for 4 minutes and 17 seconds, you're behind 2 points in the most important game? He said, I was trying to think of something to do. Now, I told that story. Bob Collins said, yeah, and it took him 4 minutes and 17 seconds to think of something to do. So it really was an anomaly. 53 was more like the movie. In 1953, we had, there were 7 seniors on that ball club in 1954 when we won the state tournament. Those 7 kids were playing B team, myself and my 6 teammates, as sophomores, and some of us got a dress for the varsity. We were 20-20 men. We got in when you were 20 ahead or 20 behind, but we were playing B team, and we lost the first game. The second game of the season, our coach, Mr. Grinstead, we thought he was an old man. He might have been 40. We're playing Osgood, a county rival, and we're down 20 points at halftime. And at halftime, he told there were 7 seniors on the varsity. Now, think of how important basketball was in the 50s, 60s, 40s, 70s. I mean, there weren't professional sports here. I mean, everybody lived and died by the basketball team. The coach told those 7 seniors that if they didn't come back and win this game, he's taking their uniform and kicking them off the team. We got beat 82-44, and he draped 7 uniforms on his arm as it kicked them off. They're gone. Coaches are pretty smart, though. He brought the 2 best basketball players back. Myself and Bob Engel moved to the starting 5, had the best season Milan had ever had, and we lost the sectional. I was home with the flu. 3 other guys had the flu. But here were 7 of us coming back. We only lost those 2 guys he brought back. The superintendent, a month after the season, fired Mr. Grinstead. Folks, that wasn't very popular either. Yeah. And here comes this Marvin Wood in, 24 years old, had a 50-50 record, coached at French Lick, and he changed our whole system. We went from run and gun, Branch McCracken, to more Hinkle system. We did run, but the Hinkle pattern system. He closed practice. That wasn't done in the 50s either because everybody was criticizing Woody. Mr. Grinstead, who was fired, was living in Milan, coaching 3 miles away, and his wife had a beauty parlor in Milan. So there was a lot of controversy. There was a movement to get rid of Woody and get Mr. Grinstead back. We won the first 5 ball games, and you know what happened? Best damn coach I ever knew, that Marvin Wood. I never criticized him. So in 53, keep in mind, Milan had never won a game in the regional in the history of our school. And here's this 24-year-old guy that came in. We won the sectional. We go to the regional, and we're down 9 points to Knightstown Morton Memorial, home for orphan children. Okay? Minute and 48 seconds to go. We're down 9. Woody brought us a full-court trap press, stole the ball 3 times. We'll get within 2 points. Ray Kraft, who was a substitute that year, hit a layup. We tied the score with zeros showing. First overtime tied. Back then it was sudden death. The second overtime, the first 2 points wins. You can hit a free throw. They hit a free throw. You hit a free throw. You're the winner. I had 2 free throws. We won the first game in the history of Milan High School. 5 fans, then they came in coat and ties back then. 5 fans, fully clothed, showered with us down in the dressing room. That night, we lost by 2 points. We won by 2 points. We beat Connorsville. We didn't get news down in Milan. We got it from Cincinnati. We didn't know Connorsville was rated number 5, but they were. We beat them 24-22. The afternoon game of the semi-state, Shelbyville, Attica, was an overtime. So it was a double overtime, 2 points in overtime, and then we beat Shelbyville that night 43-21, and it's still a record for our finals in the semi-state. We held them to 2 field goals. They were 2 for 47 from the field. And then South Bend Central handed it to us, and they won that night. So 53 was like the movie. 54, I didn't know this. I mean, you don't realize that when you're playing and going through. And if David Havlicek, I got 20 boxes I haven't even opened in my basement. I wouldn't have known that. That's a long story for holding 4 minutes and 17 seconds. But Don, how you doing?
Well, if I'd have realized I could have ordered a pizza.
Well, it looked pretty good. I saw some pizza being eaten there.
You know, your teammates, obviously the light has always shined on you, but you've always brought them in. How many of them are still here?
It's amazing. You could only dress 10, and we had 2 alternates. 10 of the 12 of us are still alive. I'll be 83 in September. Roger Schroeder and Gene White will be 84 in December. They were older guys. We brought them in to get this thing over with. The rest of the other 5 seniors will be 83, and then we had 2 sophomores and a junior. But 10 of the 12 of us are still kicking, but I can tell you we don't kick quite as high as we used to. 6 of my teammates, by the way, 9 of the 10 of us went to college. And that was unheard of in 1954. I'll bet in the previous 4 years, I'll bet there weren't 15, 16 kids total go to college. And 53 and 54 just raised the expectations, not only of the players, but the students. Of the 30 in my graduating class, 17 of us went to college. 9 of the 10 starting went to college, 1 of the alternates. 6 of my teammates, how important was coaching? 6 of my teammates ended up coaching. And I would have been the 7th, but I didn't want to take a pay cut to coach when I came back from playing at Phillips 66. They didn't pay coaches like they do today.
You know, besides the fact of what you did in 1954, you had a very outstanding career when you went on to college at Butler. You played all 4 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you could play 4 years back then. The NCAA, you could play in Division I 4 years. Conferences limited you to 3 years. The Big Ten, you could only play 3. By the way, we lost one of the greats, Jimmy Rail. What a great guy. But I did have a nice career at Butler. I set single game career scoring records. Up until 2011, I had made more free throws in a career at Butler University, and I only played in 79 games. Howard broke the record. He played in 144 games, so he broke my record. But I still hold a record at Butler. You have to look way down the line. When I set the single game record of 41 points, I was 12 for 18 from the field and 17 for 17 from the free throw line, and nobody at Butler had made more than 17 in a row in a game. So I'm still there.
know, the game has changed a lot.
Oh, I'm glad I played when I did.
And also, I don't know if you're aware of this. You've got a business. You're still busy every day, but the salaries these guys get, holy crying out loud. You put 20,000 people in the stadium, and the average salary for a guy sitting on the bench is we're only paying him $3.5 million. Oh, really?
Yeah,
gee, what a shame.
It's amazing. The salary, not only from the high school, from the colleges, high school. High schools don't make that much, but the colleges, out of sight. When I started in the insurance business back in 1963, we used to hire college coaches. We sold to college seniors a life insurance policy for $10,000. They paid $10, signed a note, and then they paid 4 years, didn't have to pay till, and they paid off the note at the end of that. College coaches were leaving their positions to come in and sell life insurance. I don't think we'd have very much success hiring those college coaches today. I think Krzyzewski makes, what, $8 million a year?
That's all?
Well, yeah.
I bet he makes more.
I understand, yeah.
I bet he makes more than that. Rick Pitino,
Well,
I think, was
official,
making...
what they pay him.
Oh. Let's not get into that now. I don't want to have somebody chasing me around the street. Did you ever have the desire, other than the fact you wouldn't have made as much money, to go and coach?
I was going to coach and teach, and you notice I said coach and teach, not teach and coach. And I probably would not have been a very good coach. I coached CYO when my kids were in grade school. I coached at Phillips 66 for 7 games when the head coach, Bud Browning, was my coach. He was a 1947 Olympic coach when Phillips 66 beat the Kentucky Wonder Five. And I was 7-0. I'm undefeated. But I could play at that time, and it was fun. I'm not sure that I would have been a very good coach. Now, you may not believe this, folks, but honestly, I was a very shy, bashful kid in high school. Howdy will tell you. It was hard for me to talk with anybody. They thought at Butler that I was stuck up. I didn't go to the C Club because, my God, if a girl sat down next to me, what in the hell am I going to say to her? I mean, it was embarrassing for me. It was a very difficult thing to get to the point where I can be up here and talk with you all as if I've known you for a long period of time. But it was something that was learned, and it was, a lot of it was because they asked me to give speeches right after the tournament. The first one was to a POW club in Indianapolis. Now, Milan had a population of 1,100. I lived in Pierceville. We had a population of about 73. Obviously, we didn't have a POW club. I didn't know what it was, but I told them, yes, I'd give a speech. By the way, I didn't have a telephone when I graduated from high school. We never had running water, didn't have electricity till I was 13, so all of these things were a marvel to me. We had 2 young teachers come to Milan that year, Barbara Waters and Corky Denari, an aunt of Chris Denari, and I went to them and I said, I got to give this speech, but I don't know what I'm going to say. And they said, we'll help you. They came out to my house and said, the first thing you got to do is tell a joke and loosen up the crowd. And I said, I don't know any. They said, I'll tell you one. 2 golfers. One golfer hit the ball and it landed on top of an anthill. Went out, took a swing, third of the anthill gone. Next swing, another third. Next swing, another third. Nothing left but a golf ball and 2 ants. And the one ant looked at the other and said, what are we going to do? And said, we better get on the ball. I got 0 for that speech, which was correct. My insurance company had a thing in Palm Springs, California. We paid a guy $10,000 as a motivational speaker. In the middle of the speech, he said, there's 2 golfers, a ball landed on the top of this. So this is a learned situation, and I can have some fun with it, and I hope you all do.
You played professionally, and would you like to, you sit and watch the NBA today, and they pay these guys huge amount of money. Would you like to be playing now for that kind of a salary?
Number one, I couldn't play now the way they play, but yeah, I'd like to have made that amount of money. But you know, it's relative. I can tell you, I was selected to the East-West All-Star game when I was at Butler, 12 from the East, 12 from the West, and played at Madison Square Garden. I roomed with Archie Dees, who was the #1 draft choice in the NBA.
Yep.
While we were there, Abe Saperstein's calling to play in the College All-Star and against the Globies. $100 a game, 18 games, $1,800. Dad made $3,200 all year. Archie Dees, his offer as #1 draft choice was $8,000 a year. Teachers were signing for $4,000 and $4,500, if that gives you a perspective. He declined the Globies because he called McCracken. That would have made him a professional, and he had no bargaining rights. He signed with Denver and Arley. I didn't know Phillips 66 had a team. Mr. Hinkle's the reason I'm out there. I called him, told him I could pick up $1,800, and Mr. Hinkle was a great guy, but he probably was the stingiest guy. And he had fish hooks in his pockets, man, and nothing came out of there. And he said, that's a lot of money, Bob, but I've got an appointment for you at Phillips 66 out in Oklahoma when you get back. And I said, who's that? And they said, well, they got a team. It's AAU. And I said, okay, so I turned it down. Archie turned it down, signed with Denver in our league, and got $12,000, which was the regular guys. I turned down the Hawks and the Lakers at the time. I would have made like $4,000, $4,100, which was just a journeyman player. I didn't know there was an NBA when I came to Butler. Never heard of it. I didn't know IU won the NCAA tournament when I came to Butler, but I knew it was a big deal because I was there 5 times and they kept talking about it. I actually went to Butler when they didn't have scholarships. I turned down IU, Purdue, Michigan State, Cincinnati, Tennessee, and 30 other colleges. Went to Butler, and a gentleman put money in the bursar's office and paid my expenses. The next year, they had scholarships. The reason they didn't have scholarships in 1954, Indianapolis had the Olympians, the NBA team, and the majority of them were the Kentucky Wonder Five. Groza and Beard and Buckshot played for them. 2 years after they formed, they used Butler Fieldhouse as their home, and Groza and Beard were barred from the NBA for shaving points, and the president said, we're not giving any more scholarships, we're de-emphasizing athletics. So Mr. Hinkle had this gentleman put money in the bursar's office, and we had Ray Kraft and Roland Cutter, the sophomore, came also, and myself. Ray and I had a tuition job. We had to take care of the Butler floor. Now, that wasn't such a bad job because you couldn't get tickets for the sectional, regional, semi-state, and we were in free. We get to go all the time. All we had to do was sweep the floor. My junior year, I don't know if I'll go ahead and tell you. my junior year, I started dating a girl, and she went to Hanover. She's 2 years behind me. We decided to get married my senior year, so she moved to Indianapolis. While she was at Hanover, I'd call her from the Sigma Chi house. She'd call me Colette. When I graduated and Janine's moved to Indianapolis, he said, thank heavens Hanover came to Butler. I'm tired of those phone bills.
You know, strangely out of this whole thing, there's a pub up in Broad Ripple. Now, I don't know where this name came from, but I saw it one day. I said, you got to be kidding. Plump's Last Shot. Yeah. So I went in there, and I said, I want a Plump's Last Shot. And I think it was your son, but I'm not sure. He poured. He said, here it is. You're kidding. Nice place. It does well.
our son runs that, and he has he started it, and he's the one that suggested Plump's Last Shot, and the logo is "There's always time for one more." By the way, USA Today selected 5 sandwiches throughout the United States. They had 5 different districts to go to, and Plump's Last Shot was the #1 in our district with a breaded tenderloin.
Really?
It's got a special breading on it, and there's meat in it instead of pounding it all out and just having fun. But anyway, I thought that was quite an honor.
And it's your recipe, of course.
No, when we opened, Jonathan, the cook cooked in Old Mexico and New Mexico, and every time I'd go to the restaurant bar, he'd say, "Here, try this, Bob. Try this. Try it." After about 15 of them, I said, "I don't care what you put in there. Go ahead and make something." But he came up with a pretty good breading.
And is he still there?
No, he retired about 8 years ago.
That place is, I've been there twice, I think. We haven't been there, but I've been up there for some, I forget why, and I went in. Fred Treadway owned a couple of places on the main street, and then I was up there, and then I went over to your place a couple of times. It's a nice little place. Why didn't
you give me a call? I'd have met you. My office is just a block north of there.
Oh, so I bet I know where you eat lunch at a good price.
I am there some, yeah.
You know, it's amazing the ride that you've been on, what you have accomplished, what you did. And I guess having had the opportunity to meet you and talk with you on a number of occasions, when you say you were shy, it's hard for me to believe that one.
Howdy, it's true, isn't it?
I'll tell you something about Howdy, speaking of quiet.
I'm sorry, Howdy, shouldn't have brought that up, man.
I bring it up. He, for some reason, they let him in the media center at the 500. He has to get up early, and, you know, he has to, his honey takes him for a walk, get him kind of loosened up. He comes upstairs. He sits down, unfortunately sits right next to me. Now, when this guy snores, holy smoke. You can't tell if it, we think the cars are going, they said, no, there's a caution. Oh, it must be Howdy. Yeah.
You want this mic?
No, sit down before you fall down. You know, I'm sure you heard this, but there was a team in Illinois did the same thing you did. I don't remember when it was, in the 70s or 80s. Hebron High School.
Hebron wasn't the 70s or 80s. Hebron was in 52, and the Judson brothers played for Hebron.
Okay.
They played at Illinois, and when I was at Butler, we played 8 Big Ten schools and had a home-and-home with Notre Dame, and I played against the Judson boys.
Did you?
Yep.
Yeah, well, that was big, like it was here.
It was a great, it was a big deal.
When Hebron won, that was, I think the town is a little bit bigger than yours, but not much.
Well, I know it was bigger than Pierceville.
This bar is bigger than that. There's more people here than there.
Yeah, you're right.
Is there anything that you haven't gotten to do that you would like to have done? Say, gee, I wish I'd have been a referee or whatever.
You know, not really, Don. When I was with Phillips, Phillips wanted you to get out and work. So the most anybody ever played there was 6 years. By the way, when I went out to Phillips, again, I didn't know they had a team, but they had never seen me play. They had never saw a film. I shoot for 10 minutes, and the coach and the assistant coach are the only ones there, and they told me to take a shower. I'm in that shower room. All I saw was $1,800 flying out that shower door. I come out, and Bud Browning says, "We want to hire you." Well, I became his assistant coach. I played 3 years, and I got a collapsed lung. Howdy, playing defense, by the way. John Barnhill got me right there when I went up to block his shot. And Phillips, it was by dumb luck. It was better than playing in the NBA. The NBA had teams in the early 50s, Fort Wayne, Syracuse, Rochester, New York. Furthest west was Minneapolis, St. Louis, New York, Philadelphia. We had teams in New York. Cleveland was owned by John Steinbrenner, Akron, Denver, Seattle, San Francisco, Wichita, Peoria Caterpillars, and Phillips. And we represented the United States on goodwill tours. We were in the Middle East for 7 weeks representing the United States and traveled up and down. We went to Jerusalem. We were in Jordan, ended up in Rome. We were in Greece. 7 weeks in Mexico. But when I was assistant coach, this is how Mr. Hinkle was respected. I asked Bud Browning, the coach, I said, how in the world did you hire me? Never saw me play, never saw a film, shoot for 10 minutes. He said, while you're shiring, I called Lou Wilkie, who served on the rules committee with Mr. Hinkle, and he said, I told him, you know, Lou Wilkie was the vice president of Phillips. I told him, I said, yeah, this kid can shoot, and he's fast, but he's awful small. Lou Wilkie said, if Mr. Hinkle said he could play, hire him. That's why there's a field house named after him. And in case you don't know, the only reason he came to Butler, he was at the University of Chicago when they dominated the conference that became the Big Ten. He was on his way to New York to sign a contract to pitch for John McGraw with the New York Giants. The Monon stopped 2 hours in Broad Ripple in the teens, 20s, and 30s. It stopped. He went out to Butler. They had an assistant coaching job position. He took it and didn't go on to New York. I asked Jim Morris, who was our trainer, I said, is that true? I heard that. He opened up a drawer, pulled out a contract, and there it was. John McGraw already signed it. He was just waiting for Mr. Hinkle to come up and sign it. But that's how he got to... There are only 2 players, University of Chicago, you only play 3 years back then, that led it in baseball, football, and basketball. One of them is Hinkle Fieldhouse, Mr. Hinkle. The other one is Chrysler Arena. And they played together.
Oh, jeez.
By the way, he pitched batting practice every year. I played 4 years of baseball for him also. Now, he was 60 years old when I graduated. He's still pitching batting practice.
Huh. Could you still hit him? Could you hit him?
You could hit him, but it was going to go where he wanted to. He'd say, hey, first coming your way, and he had that big old roundhouse curve. If you hit it, it's going on the right side. And then he'd say, third coming your way, and he did what he called a Zen shoot, which was a screwball. If you hit it, it's going. He couldn't throw it hard enough to break a plane of glass.
I got this handed to me. It said, at the risk of boring some, please talk to us about the Fort Wayne North Shore basketball in 1954. Northside basketball. Fort Wayne Northside basketball in 1954.
Fort Wayne Northside, we played them. Here's Milan. Woody, the coach, was Marvin Cave at Frankfort, and he invited Milan to an invitational tournament that included Columbus, Fort Wayne North, Frankfort, and Milan. Fortunately, we didn't have to play Fort Wayne North. I thought they had the best team I'd seen in 1954. They had more talent. Why they weren't at the state finals is a mystery was a mystery to all of us. We saw them. They won the tournament. Frankfort beat us in an overtime, and then we beat Columbus in the consolation. And Fort Wayne beat Frankfort that night. Great ball club. I can't remember their name, but they had 2 forwards that were just fantastic. And as we went through the tournament, by the time we had won the regional, we kind of thought Fort Wayne North might be there. I never heard of them before I went to Frankfort, by the way.
It's amazing communications then and now, night and day.
Again, you know, when we beat when we beat Knightstown Memorial, that home for orphan children, in a double overtime, I forgot to tell you that they were ahead of us 9 points. Minute 49 to go. We stole the ball 3 times with a defense that Woody brought to us. We get within 2 points. There's 21 seconds showing on the clock. We called timeout. When we threw the ball in, we're down 2 points. The timer forgot to start the clock. People are screaming. They're throwing things on the floor. The officials finally saw it, went over to the scorer's bench, and they argued for 2 or 3 minutes. We're in a huddle wondering what in the world is going on. They didn't take any time off the clock. They estimated between 8 and 10 seconds ran off the clock, and Ray hit that bucket with no time showing. After we won in double overtime, we had a weekly paper, Tiny Hunt. You can imagine he only weighed 360 pounds, but he was Tiny Hunt. And he came out in the paper and says, Milan steals from orphans. Basically, we did. I was talking at a Sigma Chi luncheon back in the 80s, and this gentleman came up afterwards, and I had told that story. He said, I'm the timer. His name was Ernie Cap Privet. I said, what in the world happened? He said, well, while you threw the ball in, somebody kicked the plug out of the clock, and we didn't know how much time to take off or what we were supposed to do, and I just asked him if a guy from Milan happened to be sitting next to him.
Oh, boy.
That would have made a great thing in the movie, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I've been asked a number of times, are you going to try and get Bob Plump back? I said, well, I can see if he'll answer the phone again. He'd like you to see who it's from and go, well, I got to fold my laundry. I'm busy right now. But you've always answered, and when I've invited you, you've been here. I still marvel because I'm from Illinois, and I heard about what happened here. I mean, I heard everybody.
What's amazing, we were a bunch of naive kids. I mean, we didn't realize this was that big a thing. But that night, before we went up and played Muncie Central, Pat Stark was our motorcycle policeman. But one of the big deals was, we didn't have stoplights in Milan, but one of the big deals was that when you come to the semi-state or state in Indianapolis, you have a motorcycle policeman, he turns on the siren, you get to run all the stoplights. Before we played Muncie Central, he's in our dressing room, and he said, fellas, I'm going to tell you what, if you beat Muncie Central tonight, I'll take you downtown. By the way, we didn't come in buses. We had a GM dealer in Milan. He gave us Buicks for the semi-state and Cadillacs for the state tournament. So we're driving our Cadillacs. He said, I'll take you downtown Indianapolis, and we'll go around the circle the wrong way. And he did. Almost got fired. He traveled with us to Milan. The interstate wasn't there. Now, Shelbyville, we had just defeated the year before, 43-21. They met us at the outskirts with the police cars and took us through Shelbyville, and people were standing on the sidewalk cheering us. Greensburg was the same way. There was an 18-mile-long caravan behind us. We got to Sunman, which is 9 miles from Milan on 101. Cars were parked along the side of the road and people were walking. We thought there was an accident. They had state police in Milan because it was nobody. They closed everything. They were there to protect the town. They estimated between 30 and 40,000 people came through that town of 1,100 that day, and they came from 5 states. And you know what we thought? We thought, man, look what happens when you win a state tournament. Ain't this fun?
Well, you certainly took a basketball happy state and put it on the map, no question. And to this day, I find it very exciting, the fact that people still do recognize it, and not all just old farts like me.
They teach history in the grade schools anymore, and up until about a year ago, 1 or 2 4th or 5th graders would come in the restaurant with their parents, and they'd have all their questions written down because they picked somebody that they recognized from history and ask questions, then they go back and make a report on it. It's so much fun, They got the little sheets. They're looking down here and they're going in it. And haven't had that for a couple of years. Maybe they quit teaching. I don't know.
Really? Oh. Well, I'll tell you what. And I recommend this. I wasn't aware that they were rated high there. High.
Yes. Years ago, the 1954 Milan State Championship jacket with the logo, Dale Ogden was the curator, and he secured it. It is down in the Indiana State Museum along with the backboard and goal that my father gave me when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade. He gave it to me for Christmas. I was the last of 6 kids, and we put it up as high as we could, about 9 feet. You knew who got to play on that thing last. That was me. But that's hanging down there next to Oscar Robertson's uniform. And the 53 jacket, that's an interesting story. You're only allowed 1 letter jacket by the IHSAA. In 50, now the people from Milan back then will tell you, oh, they knew we were going to come back and win it. Well, if they did, how come they gave us a jacket in 1953 that said state finalist 1953? When we won it in 54, they had to go to the IHSAA and get special permission to give us a jacket that said state champs 1954, and that's the one you have.
Yeah, so this young lady is one of the executives at the Indiana State Museum.
How's Dale Ogden? I know he retired. You tell him I said hello. Well, yeah. He picked that. Asked him about that backboard. He went down to get it, and it was at my sister's house in a chicken coop. And he'll give you a great story.
Well, we've run over and nobody's crying. What do you want?
The books are out of print. We sold 40,000, and we're printing them again. And they're going to print 100,000. Should be printed sometime in the next 3 months. Yeah, there'll be a few editions. That one came out in 1998. And there are some additions that'll be put on the new one. It'll be a little bit different, but there'll be some books out. I will. Absolutely.
Well, I tell you what.
Be glad to.
Maybe I'll drag you back here and we can sell some and sign them here.
We can do that.
Yeah. I asked Howard, you should write a book. About what? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know about what. I just figured out to write a book. I bet you do. Is it clean? Shirley's next to you. Oh, okay. Oh, jeez. Well, he was never in the military, so he doesn't know what turn 2 means. Anyway. I can't tell you how pleased I am that you've taken the time to come here again. It's that time of year, state championships in Indiana high school basketball. March Madness is right around the corner. The Big Ten women just finished playing. This is a hot time of the year. So
great time for basketball.
It is. Do you go to any games?
I've got 3 discs that fused due to arthritis. I can't sit that long. I got to move around. So, no, I don't.
Oh, well, you can take some books.
I don't even go to the Butler games, and I miss it.
Well, I bet they miss you, too. Well, you can take some books when you have some in a little cart, and you can walk around and sell them. When the new books come out, would you brag a box and come in again?
Sure. Be happy to come back.
Okay. You heard him. You heard him. Thanks for being here. I look forward to having you. And I say a number of people say, when are you going to get him back? Well, here he is. He came.
Don, it's my privilege. Thanks for inviting me.
Here
Look
he is.
Look forward to the next one.
The Hall of Famer, the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, Bobby Plump. Thanks. Appreciate it. You will hear from me, by the way. You're going to come out, let me know. Okay. Next week, my original first guest was scheduled here, was down at the tip-off for the Pacer game. He will be here next week. Jack Harvey, his girl, assured me he would be here. So, and I've got another couple of guests I'm working on. So stick with us. See you next week. Don K saying good night. Thanks for watching, listening. See you next time. And by the way, if anybody would like some tickets to the Indiana State Fair for the Flower and Patio Show, I've got 6 left. Help, come on up.